Very alive.
So now we are live. So everyone is watching.
Thank you. Fine.
Yeah, from Morocco, of course.
From Morocco.
Okay, so maybe we wait for just minutes to let others join us for this live webinar.
I wish I were back at Jumalfna. I was in Morocco. That was the first Arab country I visited. But that was many years ago, 1956.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we are live now, and hello everyone who's watching from Morocco. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a great pleasure and honor for me to introduce and welcome our distinguished guest today, Professor Johan Galtung, who is going to talk about,
My friend Bill, go ahead.
yes, who is going to talk about many issues pertaining to peace and conflict studies. Before I give the floor to our guests, I would like to give you some information about him. And this is an opportunity for those who do not know him. And of course, he is very known, famous gentleman, an opportunity for all of us to go and read about the things that he has, okay, let's say, published and done for humanity. So Professor Johan Galtung is a professor of peace studies, was born in 1930 in Oslo, Norway. He is a mathematician, sociologist, political scientist, and the founder of the discipline of peace studies. He founded the International Peace Research Institute, Oslo, in 1959, the world's first academic research center focused on peace studies, as well as the International Journal of Peace Research in 1964. He has helped found dozens of other peace centers around the world. He has served as a professor for peace studies at universities all over the world, including Columbia, Oslo, Berlin, Cairo, Japan, Spain, and dozens of others on all continents.
Can
He
I
has
just
taught.
put in one sentence there? The short version of this is that I have
Yes,
participated as a mediator in about 150 conflicts, visited and given lectures in 150 countries.
yes.
But I'm 150 years old. I'm only close to mine.
We wish you a long life.
I have written, as a matter of fact, 150 books. Exactly 100 books as the only author, and 50 books as editor, co-author, and so on.
Yes, we really appreciate that. Thank you very much for this information. Of course, you are, yes, you are an author and co-author of more than 170 books on peace and related issues and translated to many languages. Dr. Johan also is the founder of Transcend University Press, and he is the founder and director of the Transcend Peace University, the world's first online peace studies university. He is also the founder and director of Transcend International, a global nonprofit network for peace, development, and the environment, which is founded in 1993, with over 500 members in more than 70 countries around the world. As a testimony to his legacy, peace studies are now taught and researched at universities across the globe and contribute to peacemaking efforts in conflicts around the world. As a recipient of over a dozen honorary doctorates and professorships and many other distinctions, including a Right Livelihood Award, also known as Alternative Nobel Peace Prize. So Johan Galtung remains committed to the study and promotion of peace. Also, he speaks and lectures in 8 languages: Norwegian, English, French, Spanish, Italian, Danish, and Swedish. Yes, so and much more. So I can conclude by what the economist and fellow peace researcher Kenneth Boulding, who has said of Galtung that his output is so large and so varied that it is hard to believe that it comes from a human. So thank you very much, Professor Johan Galtung, for accepting my invitation to be here with us and share your knowledge and enlighten our thoughts in peace and conflict studies. Thank you very much again.
Thank you so much, Nabil, for having invited me. Pleasure to be with you all. Here I am.
Thank you. So just a reminder for the audience, if you have any questions, you can post them. And of course, we will have time. We will open the floor, give you the opportunity. And of course, you, Professor Johan, will be pleased to answer all of your questions. So,
try to.
Thank you. So, since we are talking, Professor Galtung, about peace and conflict studies, could you please give us a general idea about how you define peace and conflict and also your approach to violence? So the floor is yours, Doctor.
Well, some time ago, about 20, 30, 40 years ago, it struck me that war studies were found in many countries, and particularly in the most belligerent country in the world, the United States of America. And that's not the same as peace studies. You can derive ideas about how to avoid wars, but peace is also a positive thing, something you do positively, not only something you do for the negative reason of avoiding a war. So you can say that what I try to do is to add that positive dimension to peace studies. If you want one word for it, cooperation is of course very important. It has to be for mutual and equal benefit. Otherwise, it could only make the situation worse by making it more vertical than before. The party at the bottom is paid 10 cents an hour, and the party at the top is harvesting millions of dollars.
Yes? Hello?
Hello.
Yes. Do you think, Professor Galtung, that so peace and conflict study, why is it important to study this discipline?
You see, for that I have a very simple answer. In order to obtain health, we have health studies. The health studies divide into illness studies and wellness studies. And it took a long time before they started getting interested in positive health, not only negative health in the sense of avoiding illness. Well, you see, my father was a medical man, his father was a doctor, his father was a doctor, my mother was a nurse. So I took this paradigm, which I got with my mother's milk, so to speak, from the beginning, the health paradigm with diagnosis, prognosis, therapy, very important, DPT, diagnosis, prognosis, therapy, and put it into the problem of war and peace. That's what I did. Kind of imitating and learning from pigs.
Okay, so Professor Galton, so how can we teach our children peace?
In my experience, by means of examples. In other words, you take a problem like Israel-Palestine, definitely a problem, and you simply have your students divided into groups, and you may have some fact sheets, but be very careful, they should be acceptable both to the Israelis and the Palestinians, not be biased in other words. And you have them discuss it in groups first, and try to come up with proposals. You see, the important thing is to step from criticism to constructivism. Criticism, you may criticize one or both parties. And in Israel-Palestine, there is quite a lot to be critical about. But constructivism is to be constructive, to come up with ideas about what to do to attain peace.
Very
And
interesting. Okay.
peace can also be defined as cooperation for mutual and equal benefit. Now take note of the two words "and equal."
Okay. Yes, Professor Johan, nowadays we see that children, okay, play video games, especially war games. And we know that these games encourage violent acts, so promote violence in children. How can gaming be used to promote peace?
Our children can do it by learning it from the beginning. We sort of the parents, whenever children are fighting and quarreling and shouting, intervening a little bit and saying, why don't you sit down? Sit down a little bit. Maybe in small groups, not more than 4 people. And try to find out what's the problem. And then you try to find out what's the solution. Instead of just shouting at each other. And maybe sometimes using fists and more heavy types of violence.
Interesting. Okay, so Professor Johan, let's move on to another issue, which is very important. The predictions that you have made. So you have written a book about the fall of the US empire and then what? And in an article published, I think, in 2004, you predicted that the US empire will decline and fall by 2025, but you revised your prediction after the beginning of the Iraq War, and you said you see it as more imminent. So do you think it's likely to happen since we are in 2020? And can you talk to us about this prediction?
Well, let me try. There's quite a lot in what you said, very important. You see, when you talk about an empire, you are not talking about one country. You're talking about a center country and periphery countries, or client countries, that are used by the center country, often to do the dirty job, meaning the violence. And the US has done a lot of that. So when I am saying the US is losing its empire, I am saying that the US now has to do the dirty job itself. And that's what you can observe around the world. You see more direct US violence than almost any time before, because others refuse to do the job for it. And these others, quite a lot of them were in Europe, in the European Union. And the European Union do not want to be a client to US violence. And for that reason, the alliance between them, also known as NATO, has a crisis. And it looks like the US has to go it alone, because most of the members, by far most, are European. And there is also Canada, of course, sometimes serving as a bridge between the European countries. This is happening all around us right now. We are living it.
Of course, you mentioned something important, especially when it comes to US empire. You say in a quote that you hate the US empire, but you love the US Republic.
Once again, what's the question?
Yes, could you clarify more on that? So what do you mean by the US empire and the US Republic?
What do I mean by, I didn't simply capture it, because you swallow the last word, you think?
Yes. So the difference between the US empire and the US Republic, and why do you hate the US empire and you love the US Republic?
In the empire, there is a center and a periphery. The periphery is also called client states. And the point about it is that the center can use the client states to do the job, the violent job for them. So, for instance, a lot of client states in Latin America, and their job was to eliminate what was called communism, which very often was not communism at all. It was just nationalism, desire to be independent, and not to be run from the outside. So, what the US then said is, we don't want to intervene, but we want the government to eliminate those people. Much of that was going on. There was one big exception, Cuba. There was one big exceptional person, Fidel. And the word Fidel in Spanish means faithful. It's important. And he could claim to have been faithful to his people and not to the US. And for that reason, people are flocking to his cemetery, the cemetery where he is buried, and paying the homage to him. I think there are not so many people in history who is remembered with so much love as Fidel Castro, and so much hatred by some others. Of course, controversial. And we in the West have had a bad tendency to pick up only the US side of how to look at Castro. Right? You can go to Latin America and find another side.
Okay. Professor Johan, you mentioned during an interview on Al Jazeera YouTube channel, they asked you some questions and they said that some negotiations work and some others don't in conflict as the Palestine-Israel. And you said because there are still negotiations. they are not dialogue. So how can we encourage dialogue between nations and societies?
Well, in my experience, the most important way to do it is to have a vision of the future. In other words, a future with Israel and Palestine living together with no problem. We in Transcend have produced such a vision, and it is, if you will, a WANA. It's the North Africa and Middle East, as people usually call it. I would call it West Asia. In WANA, West Asia and North Africa. As a region. As a region that runs its own self. And in that region is Israel as one member. And Israel may one day be astonished to see how willing Arab neighbors are to have Israel in its midst. There are very few who would subscribe to the old slogan of throwing them into the sea or anything like that. Very willing, but on equal terms. So the question is how to define those two. I give something to you, you give something to me. Let's discuss whether it is a quid pro quo, whether it is equal for equal. But we can sit down. Maybe we could do a little bit more of that, and you could do a little bit less of this, or something. It's called a dialogue. Be aware of what the word dialogue means. Dia means by way of. It's nothing to do with the word with the number 2. Log stands for logos, a word, by way of words, not fists, not guns, not bombs, not nuclear weapons, missiles, by way of words. Now words can also hurt and harm, so some people might have to speak more peacefully. And one way of doing it is a very simple way, is to ask questions rather than exclamations. In writing, sentences with question mark. In Spanish, even 2. One inverted in the beginning and at the end standing upright, instead of exclamation signs. And here the Spaniards have the same typographical manner. One in the beginning, up, down, and the other one at the end, down, up. In other words, a little bit less proclamation and statement, and somewhat more questions. And you might be surprised to find that the other side also has questions. How would you react if we did the following? It's often a very important question. And it is by mutually questioning each other by means of words that the dialogue can proceed and to ever higher levels. Good ideas will emerge. Somebody will say, well, you may perhaps reject this, but it strikes me that one thing we could do is, then it turns out that the other side is not rejecting at all. It's saying, no, I accept that, but you have to add. Then we are in business, in dialogue business.
Thank you very much, Professor, for the informative answer. We know that you mediated in over than 150 conflicts between states, nations, and countries. How did you managed to mediate between societies and countries? Did they invite you to mediate, or just through your articles and interest in writing? Could you please give us a concrete example of your mediation?
I think the word concrete is very important. And people want to have concrete answers. Not only constructive, but concrete. And that's what you have to give them. That's my task. They can reject it, they can improve it, and they generally do something in between, reject some part and improve some parts. But my task is to contribute with some raw material ideas that the parties to a conflict can work on.
Okay, can you give us an example of your mediation between nations that you already did?
Just a second, I have a problem now. Could we take a little break? There is somebody ringing me.
Okay, yes.
Just a second.
السلام عليكم الحضور الكريم. كما ترون كان معنا البروفيسور دكتور يوهان غالتون من إسبانيا في لقاء خاص ومباشر حول Peace and Conflict Studies أو السلام والصراع، دراسة السلام والصراع. يعني كما تعلمون يعني هو يعني كبير سن، يعني حاليا في التسعينيات من عمره، فنتمنى له يعني طول العمر. فقط لقبوله للدعوة فهذا شرف لنا جميعا أن نسمع ونأخذ عن موضوع Peace and Conflict Studies من يعني المنبع، من كما يقال من رأس العين. فهذا شرف لنا جميعا. فإذا كان هناك أي تساؤل باللغة العربية أو بالإنجليزية أو بالفرنسية وحتى الإيطالية أو يعني فهو يتكلم كما قلت 8 لغات، وهو الآن يعني يريد أن يأخذ قسط من الراحة في دقيقة أو دقيقتين. إذا كان هناك أي تساؤل فيما يخص حل النزاع والصراع الدولي في هذا المجال باللغة العربية أو بالحتى الإنجليزية فمرحبا. يعني ريثما يأخذ قسط من الراحة، أعتقد أن يشرب كوب من الماء، فنتمنى له طول العمر. المرجو يعني نشر هذا المباشر حتى تعم الفائدة الناس المهتمين بهذا المجال. Welcome back.
Okay, as you can see, here I am back again.
Yes, my question
is... hurry up now because what do you want now?
Yeah, just to give us a concrete example of your mediation between countries.
Between what?
Countries. How you solve
difficulties with your last word.
Yes, how you solve problems and conflicts between states or societies.
In general, by giving a vision of what a solution could look like.
Okay.
The vision method. But before you do that, before I do that, I have to have long dialogues with all parties. And all parties means all parties. Usually there are 2 parties that stand out, but you can always ask them, whom else should I talk with? And they will say, well, I don't like them very much, but I guess you have to talk with this one and that one. And you start, in a sense, you see, getting more and more deeply into it until no new parties come up and you have a feeling that you know the scene, the stage, the actors. But remember, Your task is not limited to knowledge. You have to add visions for the future.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Professor. So let's move on to another question. You mentioned the notion of peace journalism. So how can peace journalism contribute to conflict resolution and can reduce violence?
It is just a particular type of journalism focused on peace. Maybe I can explain it best by saying, can you imagine health journalism? It
Okay.
exists, in fact, you know. As a matter of fact, New York Times has always, very often, a health page. I've written them and said, could you have a peace page? No answer. But a health page they have. And no doubt there has been a lot of discussion before they had that one. So the similarity between peace and health, between war and illness, is something one can ride on. And I often use that similarity pedagogically. Because in between, you see, are three very basic words: diagnosis, prognosis, therapy.
Yes.
Instead of diagnosis, you may say analysis. Instead of prognosis, you may say forecasting. Instead of therapy, you may say amelioration, what to do. But I prefer DPT, diagnosis, prognosis, therapy. And when I do that, it has something to do with the fact that my father was a physician, his father a physician, his father a physician. My mother was a nurse, and her father is the most important of them all. He was director of health in Norway. Not that his name makes sense in this program, but let me say it. Mikael Holmboe was his name. And through his way of looking at things, you get a kind of general overview of what's important to health. So let me say, I learned so much from this, and I took it all into the field of peace. And then I had a little vacation, equation, not vacation that I almost never have, but equation. And the equation was simply, peace is to war like health to illness. And then you look for what you can learn from that. And one of the things you come up with is that there are health specialists. They have names like physicians and nurses. But we have the peace specialists. We have war specialists, yes. But the specialists are on the negative side. And they are, of course, the military. Very well trained. So I'm then saying peace is to war like health to illness. But fortunately, we don't have illness specialists. But in cases of war, we have it actually, whose task it is to spread illness. So peace to war, but we are still emphasizing war, is to be compared with health to illness, but now we are emphasizing health much more. And be aware, it's good to avoid illness, but it should be added to that building health inside the body and between the bodies. So it is good to avoid war avoidance, but one should add to that building peace inside the parties and between the parties.
Okay. Thank you, Professor, for your informative talk. Now I would like to ask you another question. During an interview on YouTube, you said if you just are willing to say we could learn something from somebody else without becoming that somebody else could be interesting, and you were talking about Islam, that we can take interesting things from Islam. Do you think that Islam plays an important role in resolving conflict and promoting peace?
Very, very important. And the word Islam is related to the word peace.
Yes, salam.
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 Exactly.
Salamu alaikum. Peace upon you.
That's it. Peace upon you. So in a sense, it is built into it. Whereas the word Christianity celebrates one particular person. And I must say that if you look at one particular saying by Jesus Christ, look at these people who don't respect me and my message. Take them, tear them away, trample on them for my feet. Look at the peaceful approach to your enemy. With your enemy you have dialogue. And you're waiting for something that he has that you have overlooked and may enrich you. And you're hoping for him to do the same. And you're willing to declare, thank you for that point. I learned something. Hoping for the other one to reciprocate. But you don't force them in. So I just gave some little bits, but it tastes like this work for peace. Vision, vision, vision. And then what you do is that you put the visions on the wall, so to speak. You make them visible. The word vision has to do with sight, eye, visible. And there is something called a commanding vision. This is a vision that everybody would take seriously, but not necessarily know how to do, how to implement. So, for instance, a vision of a peace for the Middle East, or as I prefer to say, WANA, West Asia, North Africa. It's a big region. There's a question of how all those fantastic, wonderful countries can cooperate. And usually it's a question of being imaginative and creative in finding good projects of cooperation that would benefit all.
And also you mentioned during an interview, especially when you were asked to give your advice to the President Barack Obama, the best you can give. And you mentioned that he can learn from Islam how Islamic banks have survived so well.
Precisely. I've said that repeatedly. And you know, you can learn from Islam cultivating being tied together and cultivating the idea that your wellness is my wellness and your illness is my illness, shared in all the collectivity. In small groups, in bigger groups, very important. And it should be contrasted with the often excessive individualism of the West and Christianity. I think the latter two have something very important to learn from the Arab countries and Islam.
Okay.
And when you look at the Arab countries, I'm not saying that the relations are all perfect, peaceful. But if you look at the history of those Arab countries compared to the history of the Western countries in Europe, we have been devastating each other in Europe. We've had horrible wars. Even in the century we just left behind, the First and Second World Wars. Well, they were not so much world wars. They were wars starting up in the corner of northeast France and Belgium, up there, and then they spread. Now, maybe we have overcome it. The European Union says that war in our region is now unthinkable. Well, be a little bit careful with unthinkable. Depends on your capacity to think. Imagine, for instance, that Germany once had the idea we have to have one European language. And they have a very concrete, not exactly proposal, German. Well, try to impose German on the French, and you will see how much peace you have. Not much. France has tried to impose its own language on the upper class and on the diplomats with some success. Now I guess to a large extent they have English as a heavy competitor. And I think even that part of it will have German as a heavy competitor. And you will try to understand in the very near future, German will be the language of Europe. But not of Russia. They will know German. The Russians, like Slavic people in general, are extremely good at learning languages quickly. And they will learn German much before other Europeans are learning Russian. The Russian
And
language. Ruskoy язык. It's a difficult one, unfortunately. And the alphabet will frighten many people away. Actually, that's the easy one. That you can learn more or less in one day, definitely in 1 week. But try the conjugation of verbs and cases, nominative, accusative, dative, genitive, and so on. It's tough.
thank
So
you, Prof.
well, I can recommend Norwegian. Our language is a simple one. It's a kind of simplified German. But I'm afraid we're a little bit too small for that. I can give an example. I am, you are, he is, we are, down to they are. And it is am, are, is, are. In Norwegian, jeg du han vi dere de It's add. I could say that Norwegian is a kind of simplified German and make propaganda for it. But I'm afraid we're a little bit too small. I would hate the idea of imposing ourselves. But what we have obtained in the Nordic countries is a kind of mutual respect for each other's languages and gradually coming together, eliminating unnecessary differences into a Nordic common culture.
Thank you, Professor Galtung. I would like to move on to another question. Nowadays, or current situation that is of COVID-19. or coronavirus.
Yes, it's our shared situation right now.
Yeah, so what will the world look like after COVID-19, let's say, crisis? During an interview, also you mentioned that like Latin America and Muslim regions, there will be a glimmer of hope and the relationships between nations will be positive and constructive. Could you please explain in more detail?
Also, that depends very much on the individual country's understanding of the danger. And the first thing that strikes you is the United States of America. Let me say United States in America, because America actually is a hemisphere with 35 countries. So United States in America has, of course, a problem, and the problem is very well known, and it is killing. Why is it killing? Because the president has denied that it is a problem. Denial doesn't help it. It's an illusion. And for that reason, I could say the more quickly they get rid of disempower is the word for it, impeach is the other word, that particular president, the better for the Americans. But he's a very clever guy. He hangs on. It's a way of surviving. And being a Republican, the Republicans know that their power depends very much on his power, and they constitute the majority. So much for the coming elections. In November, I think. So there we are. And, well, we will stay for some time, I'm afraid. But we could have a vision, and I have one message at this point. As a matter of fact, it doesn't matter so terribly much what kind of visions we have. What matters are facts of life. And there are two facts of life we have to take very seriously. One is the means of transportation, and the other one, the means of communication. Let's be aware of the fact that the means of communication are today by the speed of light. When we are communicating across the globe, or with people who have landed on the moon or Mars, that can, with the speed of light. And the other one is transportation. Not quite that quick, but the speed of missiles. With that speed, we go into the universe. And it's amazing how far they're able to do it, and do it intact, alive, even able to come back unhurt. An amazing achievement for which I have the greatest respect. But it also teaches us something, that we are living in a totally different world. And Marx, was emphasizing the means of production. And I think there is no doubt that he was right in emphasizing that. And going from primitive communism via slavery, feudalism, into capitalism, socialism, and communism. If you will, 6 stages from primitive communism to the communism he was hoping for. Well, we don't have to subscribe to that, but we can subscribe to the idea that there are different ways of doing things, and particularly clearly different means of production, and add to that different means of transportation and different means of communication. If your most speedy, quick means of transportation are horseback and a sailing boat, you may, if you can shift the horses to fresh horses, have a system of 20 kilometers per hour or 10 nautical miles per hour in sea. And we had that for a very long time. But we have broken through it into incredible speeds and ranges. The question is whether our mind has followed and has realized the consequences of that. And one consequence, of course, is the transition from the nation state to the region. Now, the nation state was almost by definition limited to what could be reached on horseback from the center. Within one day, the range of control. There is a rumor of a revolution, or at least some kind of mutiny, disobedience, at the border of a state. Rumor reaches the center, and the center dispatches its troops. In order for that to reach the problem in time, there is a limited size of the state. Now, the more we are able to solve such problems, the more the state can expand into a region. And the region can be quite peaceful in and by itself. The problem is the relation between the regions. Now, the peaceful region tends to share civilization, to be by civilization. So, the end of this long diatribe on my side is that we are moving into a world of regions, and the regions are civilizational. And for that reason, the old slogan, also by Arnold J. Toynbee, dialogue of civilizations, becomes relevant. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, the three Occidental civilizations. Occident. In the Orient, Buddhism, Hinduism, Shintoism, Confucianism, Taoism, and so on. They should know each other, the basic assumptions, and be fascinated with each other. And instead of thinking, how can I convert them to other way of seeing things, thinking, what can I learn? And what can they possibly learn from us, so that we can have a basis for mutual cooperation, for mutual benefit.
Thank you, Professor Galtung, for these information. I think we are running almost 1 hour, and really it's amazing talking to you. And now maybe before we end up, I would like to give the floor to the audience to ask questions. Okay? For the audience, if you have any questions, you can post them directly here, and I'm sure Professor Johan Galtung will be pleased to answer all of them before we, yes, I'm sure that we are, yes, we'll bombard you with questions. And thank you very much that you answered all my questions and you clarified more on that.
And so welcome. So I started with your questions.
Yes, now maybe we'll yes, give the opportunity to the audience to ask their questions.
Waiting
If you have
for
any question. Yes, so they are following us, of course, and they are watching right now. If you have any questions that we haven't covered, you can ask them, and Professor Johan will answer them immediately.
Or try to.
Try to. Thank you. So I will try to speak in Arabic for the audience. if you إذا عندكم أي شيء تساؤل باللغة العربية أو الإنجليزية أو الفرنسية فمرحبا بكم. فالدكتور بروفيسور يوهان غالتون هو الآن معنا يعني لبعض دقائق، فشكرا له جزيلا لأنه حوالي ساعة وهو يجيب عن تساؤلاتنا، خصوصا يعني رجل في سن التسعينات، فهو مشكور جدا على هذه المجهودات القيمة وعلى ما قدمه للإنسانية بصفة عامة. إذا كان هناك أي تساؤل يمكنكم تحطوه الآن مباشرة قبل أن ننهي هذا الحوار المباشر. يمكنكم تحطوا التساؤل ديالكم باللغة العربية أو الفرنسية أو الإنجليزية أو اللغات الثمانية التي يتحدث بها الدكتور. So before we, Professor Johan Galtung, before we receive questions from the audience, I would like to ask you a question that is, I think, asked at the end of every interview. How do you want to be remembered? This is an interesting question.
No, you're the first who has asked that question. I don't have any ready answer. I would, of course, hope that I will be remembered as somebody who contributed to a more peaceful world by showing concrete ways of doing it. In other words, it's not the verbal aspect. It's not, if you will, the written aspect in terms of books and things of that kind. But it is more the factual what actually came about. I could say, for instance, that I think I have some reason to claim that the ideas that came from me played a very important role in Sri Lanka peace. And I could claim several things up in the Andes, in the region of Chile, Argentina, Bolivia, Venezuela, Colombia, particularly Colombia. I could say so. So maybe I would like to be remembered, not so much for words, but for facts related to acts, my acts.
I hope so. So here we have a question. Hamid maybe said, how does Professor Johan Galtung see the power of China and non-Western superpowers in the post-corona world order?
By the Western superpower, you mean United States?
Yes.
Well, I think the world will judge them in terms of the quality of their ideas, whether they contribute something that they can use to provide better life for the citizens. And I think if you put it that way, that both the United States and China contribute. The United States contribution is particularly market related to business. But the market has a problem. It creates very, very rich people at the top. And people so poor that they starve to death at the bottom. For that reason, it's unacceptable. There has to be some limit at the top. That's less important. But what is terribly important is the limit at the bottom. There has to be a guaranteed minimum. Maybe no ceiling, but definitely a floor, to put it that way. And that's, of course, where the Nordics come in and say, that sounds like the Nordic welfare state. But we finance it to a large extent by taxing the rich. So the top 1/3 pays more in taxes than they get back. The middle 1/3, it's about it. The bottom 1/3, that's more in return than they pay for taxes. Well, that's one formula. And it is maybe an export product, maybe worth imitating to some extent. But it's only one formula. Maybe I myself will emphasize much more bottom of society. And that the basic point is, and what I say now is actually quite Chinese, to lift the bottom up. Lift the bottom up. Because the bottom means suffering. Try to eliminate that suffering. And we can take care of the top later on. Lift the bottom up, that's urgent.
Thank you very much, Professor Johan Galtung, for your answers and for being with us, for your informative talk. Actually, you enlightened our thoughts and minds, especially when you shared your knowledge with us. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation. I'm really honored to have you today with us for a live webinar. So maybe here is another question. Okay, from Pauline. Peace, as I understand, it comes from the core of the heart of each individual that is in the basic of a genuine education system in each culture. However, in order to achieve peace, what is the best way to promote it? Yes, this is a question. What is the best way to promote peace?
To do it.
To do it. Very simple.
To be it. To show it. Not just to speak it and write it. And here comes the danger of the intellectual, you know. Because intellectuals, and I'm of course also one of them, and so are you. Intellectuals are very good at speaking and writing, but maybe not always so good at doing. That's the point.
So very simply, you should act. So deeds speak louder than words.
We should act and create effect. We should act peace and thereby create. And I have the little bit sad experience that the moment you manage to create something quite reasonable, and I think that transcend in general and me in particular, I've had some success up in the Andes, Colombia, Ecuador. The media are no longer interested. Media are not interested in peace. They're interested in strife and war and something negative. And you mentioned just a little while ago the two words peace journalism. I didn't quite answer it. My point is a journalism that knows something about peace, is able to ask the right question, and for that reason can contribute to it. What we have is war journalism, and maybe some avoidance of war journalism. And of course, the most popular, well-known way of trying to avoid war is called balance of power. Right? Balance of power usually doesn't work. They may be balanced in 10 types of weapons. We would both be searching for the other, try to outsmart the others. In other words, the very formula balance of power is an invitation to create imbalance, to be on top. That doesn't necessarily mean war in violence, direct violence, but it may mean structural violence. If I'm on top of you, you better respect it. If you don't, you will suffer the consequences. So if both of them say something like that, I wouldn't call that peace. Peace is not a balance of threats. But if one of them is much more peaceful than the other, not so good either. So there has to be some balance. The word balance stands high in the ranking of words.
Okay, thank you, Professor Johan. Again, maybe people are asking some questions at the same time. So maybe the last question, I think, what would your advice to presidents of countries of the world be? So the best you can give, your advice to presidents in general.
You see, as you swallow the last word, I simply don't understand what was my advice to.
Yes, your advice to presidents in general for promoting peace.
You mean the leading statesmen in general?
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Well, they're not necessarily could be called prime ministers,
yes,
if
in general, leaders, yes.
monarchs, they're kings. I met a lot of them. And let me first say one thing. My first experience is there are good reasons why they have that high position. These are maybe portrayed by their enemies as crooks and stupid and things like that. I have met many people whom I respect highly. But they are not so good at the thing that you are now searching for. Namely, finding cooperation for, here come 4 words, mutual and equal benefit. Mutual benefit is not good enough. That's capitalism. The guy at the bottom has 10 cents a day. The guy at the top has 10 million a day. It's mutual. It's benefit, but it's not mutual. Well, it is mutual, but it's not the 2 words and equal. So with that 4-point formula, mutual and equal benefit, you come quite far. And that's not my formula. It was invented by Jawaharlal Nehru and Mao Zedong and presented at the 1954 Bandung Conference in Indonesia. Mutual and equal cooperation for mutual and equal benefit. A very good piece for me. You can put it into the message in media. If the woman is assigned only to the kitchen and to the children, maybe deriving some comfort from the church, she gets something. She gets her daily food, sustenance, and so on. But the husband takes all the challenges, develops, emerges at higher levels, and has the power. Okay, so it is mutual benefit, but not equal. You can say that the woman has more power than shows, and that is very often the case. very often she is in fact on top of the household. But when it comes to setting the tune, getting the money, having the ultimate details, it is nonetheless the man. Mutual and equal benefit. This is known all over the world as the gender problem, and solutions are being found. I'm amazed. I'm 90 years old almost, and how much of it has happened in the last 30 years, making enormous progress. But if we are talking that way about gender, how about generation? Well, the age of voting is lower and lower and lower in more and more countries. That's one way of it. But I think it's also true that adolescents are being listened to and being taken more seriously. And this also goes down to children, even to very small children, taken more and more seriously. But on the other side, of course, we have the accumulation of experience that at some point may turn a person into a person who has not only knowledge, but wisdom. Wisdom. The ability, I would say, to be holistic and dialectic, to see totalities, and to see their inner life, the contradictions in the contradictions. And this is, of course, where China enters, with yin-yang, contradiction. But China doesn't stop at that point. There is yin and yang in yin, and yin and yang in yang. And there is yin and yang in the yin and the yin, and yin and yang in the yang in the yin, and yin and yang in the yang in the yang, and yin and yang in the yin and the yang. In other words, very different, much richer than our good true force. And the Chinese say about Western thinking, well, you have not even started thinking. You're just saying two words like good, bad. But you have to be open to the good and the good and the bad and the good. And the good and the bad and the bad. And then the good and the bad in all of them. And I remember I once asked one of them, a Chinese professor of philosophy, okay, I said, I accept that. Very difficult to do that. But how many steps down are you able to think that way? The good and the bad and the good and the bad, the good and the bad. He says, in China, I manage 6 steps. For instance, you're debating capitalism versus socialism. Okay? Then what is good and bad about capitalism and what is good and bad about socialism? If you try to spell it out. And what is good and bad in these things that you have found good and bad? If you try to spell it out. And well, I said, you know, in the part of the world where I live, you have a tendency to divide people into capitalist-oriented and socialist-oriented. And he said, that means you haven't even started thinking. You start thinking when you accept. There is always the good and the bad in everything. There is yin and yang in everything, including in yin and yang. And then on we go. As Americans say, and Americans often are very good at finding very good formulations. Down we go, all the way down. As long as you're able to.
Thank you, Professor Johan Galtung, for all your answers, for your informative and interesting speech. We really bombard you with questions and you covered all of them. And we really appreciate that. We really appreciate being with us. And your legacy, of course, continues. And we wish you a long life full of happiness.
Thank you so much. And then 24th of October, United Nations Day. And I find it fascinating. The UN Day and my birthday is the same, 24th of October.
Yes,
And
it's October, the same.
no reason why I shouldn't reach 100. And I hope to
We
be
wish you a long life.
pleasure to have this conversation. And Morocco was the first Arab country visited in my life.
Have you ever been to Morocco?
Oh yes, several
Oh, that
times.
sounds perfect.
Miles now.
جمع
Okay.
الفناء in Marrakesh, very good.
And then you go across the mountains, across the Atlas Mountains to the other side.
Very good.
Exactly. It's fascinating. Into the desert. And from
Desert.
Marrakech, you have 4 or 5 roads pointing to the sea, all of them beautiful.
Ah, that sounds perfect to hear that.
I love it. I love it. I want
Thank
to go
you
back
very
again.
much.
Definitely find a way of doing it.
So when were you in Morocco? When exactly?
More precisely, 1956.
Wow, 56. The Moroccan independence.
Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly. Exactly. Independent. Of course, the language spoken everywhere was French.
French. Yes, French.
French. And I didn't see so much independence. I heard much talk about it. But the mind had not been made independent. The Moroccan mind, at least the minds that I met, were thinking French thoughts in French at that
Okay.
time.
Thank you. So what do you think about Moroccan hospitality in general, Moroccan behavior?
Fantastic. Very, very high. Be
Thank
that
you.
in Marrakesh itself, be it in Fez, whatever.
Fez,
I love it.
Casablanca,
Absolutely.
yes. And the south, for example, have you visited the south?
Because I find it a little bit too Western in general. You know, for me, Marrakesh and Fez are more sort of genuine.
So we say you're welcome. In Arabic, we say مرحبا بك. مرحبا بك.
Thank you so much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. We wish you a long life. We hope to see you again here in Morocco. We'll be pleased to see you here in Morocco.
We'll find a way of organizing it.
I hope so. I hope
Thank you
so.
so much. Thank you.
You're most welcome. So I think no more questions. We have another question, but I think it's enough for you, Dr. Galton. Maybe
Yes.
so. We can ask you another question.
We have covered a lot now. But if there is a burning question, come with it.
Yeah, maybe here this is in Arabic. ما يلاحظ اليوم. Okay. أن أغلب الدول العربية تحظى بتعرف مجموعة من النزاعات والصراعات وخاصة المناطق التي تحت مواد طبيعية مهمة. هل يمكن بالإضافة الكريمة أن يخص أسباب؟ Okay, so here is a question about the conflicts between nations. Especially we find that these conflicts exist in Arab world, Arab countries, and not in the West. Most of conflicts and wars. Why?
Could you repeat it? What's the question?
Yeah, the question is why do we find conflicts in Arab world more than in other industrial, let's say, countries?
I'm not so sure that that's factually correct.
Maybe, yes.
See, let me say one thing. It comes immediately. If you look a little bit back in history, we had enormous and horrible conflicts among European countries. But we found a solution called the European Community. First European Economic Community, then the word economic was dropped, European Community. Today it's called European Union. In other words, integration. I think other countries could study the process, learn something, not imitating it blindly, but it's called integration.
Okay, interesting. Yes, I will try to translate from in Arabic. يعني الجواب على هذا السؤال بأن أغلب هذه الصراعات تتواجد في الدول العربية. يعني قال هذا بأنه ليس حقيقة، لأن إذا يعني راجعنا للتاريخ فنجد بأن مجموعة من الصراعات كانت في الدول الأوروبية وغيرها. لكن حاليا هي موجودة ويمكن أن يتغلبوا عن هذا الشيء كما فعلت هذه الدول بالحوار والتفاوض والنقاش، وممكن يعني أن تحل هذه المشاكل، وقد نجد صراعات أخرى في المستقبل في دول أوروبية. فهذه ليست حقيقة أنها نعم متواجدة في الدول العربية، ممكن حاليا، ولكن من قبل هناك كانت صراعات، وممكن نرجع للحرب الباردة و يعني حرب العالمية الثانية وغيرها، فكانت حروب في غير الدول وصراعات في غير الدول العربية. Okay, thank you, Professor Galtung again. I think so. We are running more than 1 hour, I think, and we appreciate. Yes, you're welcome. Yes, شكرا. العفو. لا شكر على واجب. So I hope you learned some Arabic since you speak already.
The only Arabic I know is Lala, because whenever I am in an Arab country, people are trying to sell something to me.
Salam.
So be able to say no, Lala.
La, yes. La, la.
Twice, la,
Yes.
la.
La, la.
Yeah.
Means no.
Selling watches.
Yes.
So it's a little bit negative. I have to have patience. I have to improve that.
Yeah, but the common word.
Thank you so much for this togetherness. Now, lunch is calling on me.
Okay, yes, thank you very much for being with us and accepting again our invitation and sharing your thoughts and knowledge with us. That's so amazing, and we are honored to have you, and we hope we meet you again here in Morocco. So you're welcome. Thanks again. So I can say that I would declare this interview officially concluded. Thank you very much, Dr. Galtung.
Thank you, Nabil. Thank you. Bye for now.
Wish you a long life full of happiness.
Well, I already have a long, and it can be longer. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.